Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. You guys, I'm so excited about today's episode.
You should be.
I am. Okay, here's the deal. Maybe a year or two ago, we went to a Conservatory of the Arts school, which is like a college program for people who want to do acting and dancing and all that kind of stuff. And you shared the story of the journey of writing your book in that class. And there's like, I don't know, probably 60 people in it or something. I can't remember. And there was such... like as the story built of how this story came to you, the book, The Tree of Life that you wrote, as you begin unfolding, like, because the story behind the story is really incredible.
Right.
Right. Obviously. And so as you unfolded the story behind the story, at the end, when it all came to culmination, the entire room, like at the same time, spontaneously stands up and erupts in cheer and excitement because everybody was like, oh my gosh, yes. And so today we're going to tell that story behind the story. And we've actually been doing several podcasts like this for the sake of giving hope and inspiration to people in the midst of everything that's going on in the world right now. So we just did the adventure challenge where you got to hear this amazing story of how they got an idea and then pushed for this idea to happen and all of the amazing things that happened along the way. And then we had Paul Young.
And he just killed it.
Oh, we got such good feedback about that episode, who talks about his journey in going through his shack experience and then writing the book and the stories behind the story.
Yeah.
And so I just did the longest monologue I think we've ever had on the Connected Life. But I'm so excited because that's what we're going to do today. We're going to tell the story behind the story. It's really inspiring. It reminds you that God is with you when you can't see how everything will come together. It reminds you to trust the journey. Your story will give so much hope to people wherever they're at.
And for those of you who have dreams inside of your heart, the Tree of Life was a dream to me as well in seeing it get launched. And I was able to get the original book launched, and we're coming up on the audio book launch.
Woo!
Yeah, which was one of the best experiences creating the audiobook that I've had. And we're going to actually interview Ryan, the guy who helped me record the book, and hear about the cool story that happened there as well. But as we're moving towards that, there's this dream inside of me that I am able to see this book get legs.
Yes.
The tree, Oki the tree, get legs and run and get out there and transform people's lives. And so, before we started, I just want to kind of give you a quick heads up. You, the Connected Life people who have been part of my tribe, if you want to join in on the journey with me and begin to support and see that audiobook get out there and touch people's lives, I have a couple key things I just wanted to give you guys before we start.
Yeah, come help him make his dream come true.
Totally. So this is just a super quick thing where you can rewind when you're done and come back and grab the information real quick if you want. But there's a couple key vital steps coming up here. So number one, the book is going to be released on Audible on Amazon, and mark your calendars now. It's going to be August 17th to the 21st is the main week.
Yes.
That we're going to try and push it and promote it and get people to know about it.
If a lot of people buy it all at once, it actually gets more attention.
Yeah, it starts getting ranking on Amazon and they start giving it more room, and then other people naturally, organically find it.
Yep.
So, August 17th to the 21st, go out there.
Put it in your calendar.
Right now. Stop. Pause.
Pause this thing. Pause.
And so during those dates, you go ahead and buy it, and then go to social media and this is a little extra gift I'm going to give. If you encourage 5 friends, like you tag me at Justin Stumval, and you tag 5 friends that you think would love this book, and I will at random at the end of the week choose 3 people to do a 50-minute session with.
What? I didn't know that. I didn't know we were doing that. Oh, that's
so
awesome.
whatever you want to talk about, if you go and just tag 5 friends and tell them about this incredible book and you've went out and purchased it, I will just go through all those people who've tagged me and 3 of you will be chosen at random for that.
Awesome.
And at the bottom, just please hashtag, it's so easy, hashtag the Tree of Life book, hashtag Okie, and hashtag Storytime. That's OAKIE, Okie.
Oh, okay.
So that helps everyone find it as it starts trending with tags. So
tags.
Tags.
Are you from Montana?
Yes.
Tags.
Yes.
Put it in the bag.
So here's one extra gift we're going to give everyone during that week. Just so y'all know, you can go to www.treeoflifebook.com.
Okay.
And you can go ahead and fill out your email address and we will send you a free ebook copy.
Woo!
So you can go get the audio copy, pay for that, and we're going to give you a gift of the ebook copy that you can download and share with your family. And you, again, go to www.treeoflifebook.com to get that. And so I just want to say, I know there are some of you that plan already on leaving reviews because you love leaving reviews and stuff like that.
It's the best case
You
scenario.
all know how much those help.
Reviews are the money.
Yeah.
Reviews are tips for people like us. I was listening to a podcast the other day and the podcaster was like, I wish people could give us tips if they liked the episode. Money tips. And I'm like, no, that's what reviews are. Reviews are tips.
That's a tip. So anyways, for those of you who are already planning on going out and reviewing, because that's what you love to do on stuff, I just want to say thank you for your efforts inside of that.
Yep.
And without further ado,
let's talk about it. Okay, this is the fun part. This is the story part that we're going to jump into. So it was it's a pretty funny and remarkable event that inspired you with this story to begin with. So let's take them back. It's our first year married. We are not working. It was 2008 when the economy crashed.
Yes.
We had no jobs and could not get jobs to save our lives.
Nope. And so every day there is something being ripped apart inside of my being as I feel like the inevitable doomsday is coming. And I think that that's something that a lot of people are even feeling
relating
right now.
to right now.
Yep. Is like, oh no, everything's falling apart. There's an inevitable doomsday.
Am I ever going to get my life together? Am I ever going to get to do something I want? Am I ever going to find my path?
Yeah. There's so many times that I just was like, oh no, I'm about to be homeless. What am I going to do? I'm a total failure. And I was really in a deep struggle of battling with my identity.
Yeah.
Starting to go, who am I actually? Where does my source of value come from? What does what I produce and do or not do mean about me? And so I was in a lot of philosophical and heart level questions and having to face the true belief system that was under the surface. Because what happens is when the fire turns up, all the stuff comes to the surface that's always been there.
Oh yeah. The things that you could minimize or compartmentalize, all of a sudden they're screaming at you. When a season, and that's why this season is so hard for so many people, because they're like, I have all these pain and weird, crazy beliefs that I don't know.
And a lot of times they're like, oh, this season's just horrible. And no, this season is revealing what was already horrible under the surface.
Totally. It's so hard though. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in the middle of that, and we happened to be on a little walk in the middle of the afternoon. And I've told this before, I think, here on the podcast, but it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, something like that.
What can you say really quick what you felt like the point of the season was? Like you were really struggling.
Yeah.
And then what is it that you came to find your purpose in that season?
Well, I remember there was a crossroads where I started asking a question. God, what do I do? What do you want me to do? I don't know what to do. And I was having meltdown, panic attack, cry sessions where literally you probably thought you married someone who was totally insane.
I didn't know what to do because you'd be like crying in fetal position and I'd be like, Justin, and you'd be like, get out of here.
I felt so much shame because I'd never felt so exposed and broken.
You'd never not worked?
Yeah, I'd never not worked. I felt so powerless and out of control. I didn't know where my future was going to head.
Yeah.
And again, everything I tried to put my hands to led to nothing. I was like, I can't do anything.
You were calling all of your contacts. You'd worked in the entertainment industry and had all of these like
hundreds of contacts. I'm going through and they're like, dude, there is no work. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
We're all just surviving. And so as I'm in this breaking down and deconstructive phase, I remember just crying out, God, just tell me what this is about. Tell me what to do. And I heard this simple phrase, learn how to come alive. And I was so violently angry.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
What does that even mean? And I was angry, but it was the invitation. It was the beginning of the invitation. Learn how to come alive.
You know, I love when phrases like that happen and there's not like specific instructions.
No.
Like that's so vague and like mystical. Learn how to come alive. It sounds like something like Yoda would say to you.
But that's what, that's meant to, again, be an invitation that causes us to ask the right questions and to open up our hearts to begin investigating. Because if somebody tells you an answer, a lot of times you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But when you're at a big enough place of pain that they kind of say something, but it's mysterious, you begin to engage it.
Yeah.
And so I began to engage, truly going, what does it mean to come alive? And so I began to settle into each day as it was and ask the question, all right, what does it look like to come alive today? And that looked different for each day. Sometimes it was connecting with you. Sometimes it was connecting with myself. Sometimes it was getting creative on something or playing or having fun or contacting a friend. I was really learning how to live for the first time.
And part of what it was stop imagining that outside circumstances is what can bring fulfillment.
Yeah. And during that season, I would like send Paul Young text bombs that were like, my whole life is falling apart. I'm like, what's going on? And he would always just say to me, there's only enough grace for today. Learn how to live in the grace of today. And that was part of learning how to come alive.
He's told me that before, and every time I want to punch him.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so unpractical. How am I not going to think about the future? But it's a discipline, and the more I've learned to discipline
myself. You just keep saying there's only enough grace for today.
Yep.
Live in the grace of today. So anyways.
So you'd practice living in the grace of the day. And on this particular day,
we decided to go on a walk. And we're just enjoying life together. Where previously I would have had a shame meltdown that I was doing that. And I was just embracing it. I'm like, today is a Wednesday afternoon. I don't have work. I don't know where money's going to come from. And I am just going to love talking to Abby.
I'm going to go to walk and enjoy it.
Right. And I come up on this tree in Burbank, California, and I walk over and I put my hand on this tree and I'm like, I feel the life force, Abby. There's a life force in this tree. It's had an entire life. I start imagining this tree's been fully alive for years. It's been watching everything grow up around it, all the homes be built around it. I'm like, it has a story. It's seen so much. It's survived so much. And I immediately have this download inside of me of the book.
Like a tree zapped you with its story.
It's like, here's a story.
I've been waiting for someone to listen to me, and you just happened to come and listen. I've been wanting to say this story I've had for a long time.
Okay, weirdo, you touched the tree and felt something, huh? Yeah, but it did. I got hit with it.
It was instant revelation. You instantly had a story downloaded to you.
Yep. And it was interesting too, because I could all of a sudden see an entire picture, like the visual images of everything playing out super fast.
Like a movie in your head.
And I'm like, I have to write this.
Yeah. Now, I would love if you could tell the best part of that story.
I would be honored to tell this part of the story. So this is when I look at Abby and I tell her it, and negative Nancy over here.
Oh gosh.
Poor Nancy's around the world, them and Karen's. I look at Abby and I go, and tell her the story, and she's like, that's already been done. That's called the giving tree. And it was like, and then she was, it almost felt like you were offended that I wanted to write a book. Like, I really want to make sure your parade is lit on fire before it even takes off down the street.
I mean, it was bad. This is what I learned it from my parents.
Wait, you also, may I add, it felt like there was resistance for a little while also internally when I talked about it.
I am the worst. I am the worst.
You heard it here first, folks. She's the worst.
There's no doubting it. But I will say this, that legitimately, I grew up in a house where when I had ideas, they kind of thought through what are all the reasons this won't work. And I think the concept is adults think that they're helping protect you from disappointment or pain or from wasting your time. It never actually works that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't. But so I fully admit it was one of those times in my life that I'm not proud of, but I definitely did. I responded horribly, and thank God that God sent people in your life to make sure that my voice didn't cancel out the story that had come.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add to that in just a second. But I want to say this is just similar to like Bryant's story from the Adventure Challenge that you guys heard a couple weeks ago, where a lot of people around him were like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't have a buy-in to it or whatever, but something was inside of him that had a yes on it. There's some of you out there listening right now where there's transitions happening in your life and you've been given an idea, a hope, a dream inside of you that's saying, pursue this right now. And you're going, I don't know why it doesn't make sense, but I feel a big yes. And guard your heart with it. Run after it. When you say yes, pieces start falling into place, just like how Bryant said yes, that it wasn't just a logic idea. It bubbled up from within the deepest parts of his gut.
Yeah. And even Paul Young, when he tried to get The Shack published, no publisher would touch it. I think he got like 20 rejections. Too Christian or too secular. Nobody wanted to touch it on either side. It didn't make sense. So he had to publish it himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is hope for this season. So as you're saying, speaking of hope was being dropped in the middle of this situation for me. In the middle
of me ruining it.
So we happened to move back a couple months later to Montana and live with my parents. Yeah, just a couple months later. Yep. And we were sitting down, and my mom, I can't remember exactly how she said it, but she said, guys, and I know I had not talked to my mom about anything in regards to this. No. She goes, guys, I was praying, and I felt like I heard God say that one of you is writing a book. It's kind of like
supposed to write a book.
It's supposed to write a book. And it's like a kid's adult story or something like that. Like she's explaining, but it doesn't make quite sense to her, right? And she looks at Abby and she's like, is that you? It's you, right, Abby?
No, you forgot this part of the word. She said, you need to start it. God says you have to write this book. You need to start it. He says you've been waiting to start it. You've been delaying on it, and you need to get it going, and you need to start it. And she asked
looked
me
at you,
because she thought that if you would have ever wanted to write a book like that, she would have told her.
Right. So maybe she thinks she's needing to encourage you.
And I'm just like, shoot. I'm like, I ruined this dream. Apparently God's resurrected it from the death I caused.
Yeah. And in which I'm like, actually, that's me. And Mom freaks out about it.
Yeah.
But it's really cool because when there's a divine inspiration inside of us, there's also the grace in the sense of even if we don't get it right away, there are these gifts along the way of our journey that will keep wooing us and inviting us back into it and be like, hey. And whether it's a sign, it's some sort of word from a person or something like that, there'll be these, again, the woo that'll just woo you into it.
So then I think you decided after that you're like, okay, I've got to actually do this.
Yeah. And so I just started digging in. And one of the things that I did is I didn't put parameters on when it had to be done or who it had to touch at the time, or even if it would get published. I didn't know. I just remember I kept having The Field of Dreams appear in my mind, the movie The Field of Dreams. And I couldn't even remember the full movie at the time. I just remember the portion where he just saw a vision of a field and was like, or he heard, if you build it, he will come, is what they initially said inside of it. And then he sees this field appear where there's like a baseball field, and he's supposed to plow under all of his acreage where he's on his farm, his crops that are taking care of him. And the whole point is like, I heard it through the voice of, if you build it, they will come. And the they was all the pieces, all the components, the people along the way. Just risk, just take the steps, just create. And for the first time, I was creating without all this intense pressure of it having to be unto something. Now, when I'm in the middle of not having money and not knowing where my future is, I didn't suddenly put pressure on, this has to save me and dig me out of the hole I'm in.
Right.
It was, I'm coming alive. And part of coming alive is I'm connecting to a dream inside of myself, and I'm doing it with the utmost faithfulness that I have the capacity to do it with.
Yeah. And something that I loved is you decided to not make this for expectations, because when you're trying to, I have to make this sell a ton. I have to make this be my moneymaker. I have to, like, you gave up the expectations of what this had to do and chose to do it for the sake of engaging creativity.
Right.
Instead of an outcome. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So a lot of people are always engaging stuff onto some form of an outcome.
Right.
They define in their head the parameters by which something has to look.
So success is...
Yep. They're defining success. How many people read it, how much money is made off of something. They're defining not only the success of the thing, but the self-success.
Yeah.
This is successful if I get this much notoriety, this much attention, if it's a number one New York Times bestseller,
Yep.
or whatever you want to call it. And to me, in learning how to come alive, I was redefining success altogether.
Yes.
And it was part of like, did I find joy and pleasure in that? Did I express myself in a way that felt like it was authentic to me? And so even as I was creating this book, I was asked, who's the book for? Is it for kids? Is it for adults? What's your audience?
I asked that.
Yes. And you didn't have the best response.
Nope.
And I was like, I don't have an audience. I guess I'm writing a kid's book for adults.
Yep.
And you're kind of like, okay.
I was like, no, you should pick one. Either write it to kids or write it to adults. Although Pixar has literally made all of their movies based on you.
Really, yeah.
Kids movies, that adults humor and life themes.
Yeah, totally. And so I just ignored the naysayers in my life.
Thank God.
Do remember there was a part of me that was like, I'll show you one day, Abby.
Oh yeah, I gave you motivation.
Totally.
100%. You're like, I will challenge you. But it's something that was inspiring to me. And I think because I've had so many friends who love acting, who love art, who love singing, and their goal always is like famous.
Yeah.
Not their goal
Notoriety.
is to express themselves for the joy of expressing themselves. And I think this is something we picked up from Paul Young, because when he wrote The Shack, he wasn't writing it to make it a bestseller.
That was a divine inspiration for me, being in relationship with him, which was really cool that I initially connected with him before.
Right before
all the dream of this came to fruition, because it really set the tone. Because he said originally that book did all the work it meant to do in its first 15 copies for my family.
Because that's his goal, was to express himself and give that to his kids.
And give a story to his children that could understand a piece of his journey and how he saw God.
Yeah.
And so for me, I really entered into it like, no, I need to do this for me. I've never given myself permission to dream and create in this manner and get a story out of me for the sake of it. And really, when I finished that manuscript, I could almost cry. That's weird. I just had emotion hit me. I remember the day I finished that manuscript, I went and I drew the tub. How funny is that? I drew the tub. I jumped in the tub and I just kicked back. I remember, the place we were living at that point. And I was just like, I did it.
Aww.
I did it. And I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude and success. I completed what I wanted to complete, and I could feel it hadn't even been edited yet or anything.
Yeah.
It was, and I didn't even care. I was like, I got my story out, and I felt so alive in that moment as I finished it. And
it was really healing for you. The book is about like getting back to your childlike wonder, and you had always had to work from such a young age. 13 is when you started working. And you've always had to get something unto something. You had to be fast. You had to make sure things done were in time. There was a lot of kind of abusive behavior in the workplace that you grew up in. So there wasn't a place to create something just
without
for fun.
Pressure. And I remember I'm even getting
you're crying over there, you little baby.
I am. It's because, the book was about, the book is really the allegory of me finding my childlike innocence and wonder again.
Yeah.
It was being birthed out of my experience as it was happening. Of all of a sudden, it's like my childhood was being redeemed in these first years of marriage with you. Where all of a sudden, it was this idea that there is a good dad in heaven that is really going to take care of you, Justin. And you, for the first time, can just be a kid and trust that daddy has your hand. and that you get to just come alive and play, and something beautiful will come from that play. And I remember because I even in that season, I was like, started collecting action figures again for the first time in years, and you were championing me for that. Like, do it. It's not that much, just do it. And I could feel that kid awakening, going, I've been buried here so long under the pain of all the past, all the tragedy that's happened, all the heavy times that have happened. And I could feel like this kid emerging, and it's almost like this little kid inside of me was like, can it really be this good? Can I really be celebrated and loved this much? Can I really have this much fun? Can there really be this much peace and joy and wonder inside of life? Because there was something inside of that kid who he was told at a young age, life is hard. It's terrible. It's not going to be good. Suck it up and get over it and just face the reality of how terrible it is. But something was being spoke to me inside of this season as I was doing this, where all of a sudden it's like, no, life can be abundant. It can be amazing. It can be a gift to you and the world around you. You can truly actually have an abundant life where it not only is affecting and changing you, but it's changing the world around you. And I just remember as a story would begin to flow and I would just connect with that truth of my childhood, all of a sudden this joy would overtake me every time I wrote, because I was like, there's the kid coming alive right there. There's a kid who's got a wild imagination, who's dreaming and getting every part of his story that he always wanted to be living out on the paper. Like what he couldn't live out of when he was a kid, I'm now living it and I'm getting it out in story form.
And I think I love that so much, because the book, and we'll continue to talk about how each piece fell into place as this podcast goes on, but you wrote the book as you were going through this huge journey, and you didn't put a timeline on it. So the book took a long time.
It actually took a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I would hit phases where there was nothing I could do on it.
Yeah.
I could feel there was no grace. And I would know it too, because there were times where I'd end up in Starbucks and I'm grinding for 8 hours for 2 pages.
Totally.
And I'm like, I'm not alive in this right now.
No.
I'm just grinding. And there were appropriate days where I had to like settle myself and say, hey, I'm going to push into this. And then I'd access something. But there are moments where times where I'd be like, no, it's not here. And I started being able to listen very clearly internally on what was happening inside the book. And it started teaching me how to follow the nuggets in life, in the journey of life altogether, where I would go, oh, I can feel in my gut, there's not grace for today. There's not grace for a while. Right. And all of a sudden the book would go on a shelf, and then I would go on with life. And then all of a sudden a monumental life moment would happen, and I would be undone by the reality of the truth that was going on. And I'd see a flash of characters that would flash to my mind. I would see a flash of circumstances, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is part of my book. And it felt, I don't know, it's so emotional. I felt like my heavenly daddy was writing a story with me. It wasn't just my story. It was like he was penning a story with my life that was then manifesting into a book form. And there was such intimacy and connection with my creator, my dad, my friend, that was happening in each of those moments. And I was like, oh my gosh, you walked me through this to liberate me and to give me the next piece of this pie.
He was like bringing you healing, which this is why I love the book, because the book contains those, you feel the actual authority of what you were walking through in it, which is you feel that wooing yourself to come back to childlike wonder. You feel that. I literally have listened to the first like 6 chapters over and over and over again since the audiobook was done, because there's so much hope in it that I listen to it and I remember truth. I'm like, oh yeah, we aren't alone. We're partnered with. We're going to be okay. This season is hard, but there is good that is coming from it. And there's a bigger story that we're involved in than we know. And that you can actually feel the journey you went on when you read the pages. But one of the parts of that story we can just jump into is when you got the ranch. So you had gotten stuck in your book.
Yeah.
And why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I was super stuck inside the book. And I was also stuck in life again at another crossroads. Abby was working as a receptionist in an office, and I didn't have a job. And we were just barely making ends meet. It was like we weren't going backwards. We weren't going forwards.
Yeah. We were right there.
I was like, we made it another month.
Woo!
And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I feel like we need more money. I don't know where to go right now. And then one day out of nowhere, I feel like I'm supposed to call this friend from the past. Mm-hmm. And this friend is older than me by about 25 years or so.
Yeah.
And she owns a ranch. And I just feel like I'm supposed to call and catch up. And say, hey, what's going on? And da-da-da-da. And she asked me about, what's going on in my life. And as I lay it out, she goes, I have some work out here on the ranch that could be done if you wouldn't mind. It's only a 50-minute drive one way to get here.
Come drive an hour and do manual labor for me.
Mm-hmm. At minimum wage, which I was very thankful for.
Totally.
It was like, actually, she paid me above minimum wage on that. She gave me a gift on that, and
That's
even
kind.
I think paid me miles just
That's
to help
very
out. It was
kind.
all to love me. I
That's
know.
very
It wasn't
generous.
because like I was doing something spectacular for her.
Yeah.
And so she was sewing into my life, and I'm emotional again. I remember I started this trek of going down there every day, basically an hour one way and then an hour back. And each day I would just sit and soak in gratitude. Thank you for this day. Thank you that I have something to pursue and do. Thank you for the gift of just getting to participate. And thank you for these people who are in relationship and friendship with me and inviting me in their space. And there was like a love healing that was going on in the provision of this thing. And I'm just doing hard manual labor and I'm chopping down trees. It just so happens they've got old oak trees that have been cut down and they're wanting me to split them, right? Take them through the splitter.
The tree of life is about an oak tree.
It's about Okie the acorn, who's buried in an apple orchard. And somehow he gets told the idea that his whole purpose is to make apples.
Right.
He doesn't actually know that he's meant to be an oak tree one day. And his dream is to make apples, when in all reality, there's something that he couldn't even actually dream of because he doesn't have the foresight of what he's actually going to become and what he's actually going to do.
Made to do.
And it's about all the people who interact with him along the way, the special characters of the forest, and this precious boy named Joshua who shows up on the scene. And I'll talk about that later. But as I'm there, I'm cutting these dead oak trees. And as I'm cutting them, all these termites are exploding out. And all of a sudden, I have this aha moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, these termites are a next key moment inside of the book. It was all unto this. And it was actually
literal. You literally, like, God provided a job for you that would give you a literal understanding of what the next part of the story should be.
And as it was happening, I was given, to me, this is one of the most powerful pieces of the allegory, this portion of the story that happens, and I'm not going to tell about it, but it has to do with
dun dun dun.
Oh yeah, it has to do with these termites, and it basically breaks down our battle with shame and guilt and condemnation that we as human beings take on in the midst of some of our greatest pains and our greatest tragedies and stuff like that. And I've even had psychologists, with master degrees, PhDs, who have
written in and said, this explains shame, guilt, and condemnation so clearly. I make all my clients read it.
Yeah.
Like, this picture of it is such an incredible, enlightening way to see it.
And part of it is it was birthed out of me submitting to the season that I was in. And I stopped trying to get out of it.
Right.
And I was like, all right, what is it that's in front of me? I'm just going to chew away at the meal that's presented.
I have to embrace the season instead of resist it.
Every time I got into resistance is where I found myself in deep levels of torment.
Yeah. Oh, I find that I was thinking about that the other day. What surrender does is it helps you quit walking upstream and allow you to float downstream.
Yeah.
And acceptance, and not acceptance, my life has to be horrible, but acceptance, this is the season I'm in. So now, how can this
How do I
season
navigate
propel
it?
me? How can it bring me alive? How can it open me up? Like, what is the gift in the midst of
What are the
this?
powerful decisions that I can make in the midst of this instead of kicking and screaming and fighting? I'm actually participating with it and I'm navigating it. So once you get in the flow of the stream of what the season is about, then you can all of a sudden navigate through that stream. Like you're getting to kind of paddle with it and direct your boat with it. So it's not like you're just a passenger in life, but you're an active participant with what the reality is of what's right in front of you.
Yeah. So you went to this ranch, all of a sudden the rest of the story unlocks.
A
chunk of
a
this
major
story.
chunk of the story that was leading towards the completion of the book.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, inside of it, one of the things that I know that I had to learn how to do is really face my fears.
Mm-hmm.
Every part of this story and every part of seasons, like a lot of people are in right now, it's an invitation to face your greatest fears, no matter what it costs you. It's when we say yes to it. All right, I'm going to learn how to come alive right here and now. I choose life. I choose to live. I choose into this moment. I don't know what's happening, but I know it can't. If I view it rightly and I take the right approach, this storm that I'm feeling that's right in front of me can actually be for me.
Yes. 100%. So why don't you tell us about the prophecy that you got when you were in film school?
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. So in film school, I'm doing film school, which I'm paying for this expensive film education. And funny enough,
you only used it for a short season.
Yep. I ultimately used it to write a book. But the funny thing is I was at this conference and this woman was speaking, and she personally knew me in the fact that I was her son's roommate, but knew nothing about my life.
Yeah.
Personally.
She knew your name.
She knew my name, knew I went to film school. That was it. And at that point in time, I didn't have any passion for what she was about to say, but she goes, Justin, and calls me up and she goes, I actually hear something for you over your life. I hear that you are going to be an author and you're going to write books, and it's not just one book. There are going to be many books that you write. And she goes on to say a lot about writing books. And she says something about it's going to start out with one, and then it's going to snowball into a bunch of others. There will be many. And she begins to talk about the brevity or the impact of those books and stuff. And the entire time as she's telling me it, I'm thinking, yeah, right.
This is so dumb.
This is so dumb. I have never written a book. I don't have any desires to write a book. I'm a filmmaker. I want to make film. I don't want to write some book. And so I was just and I was so melancholy and humdrum about what she was saying.
Oh, totally. You're like, this is the worst.
This lady doesn't know what she's talking about. She's crazy. She's making stuff up. And so that was really years later, there's something, I'll say this, there are invitations that will happen inside of our lives and they may not make sense to us. And those invitations aren't even necessarily asking us to do something right away. It's not like I was like, oh, some person thinks that I'm supposed to write a book. I guess I need to go write a book. I'm going to go write a book. I didn't. I was actually headstrong and bullheaded about it. But then all of a sudden, something stirred inside of me. And this thing back here was confirming something that would be inspired right now here in this time. And so as I started to actually engage the creation process, I didn't decide to all of a sudden create expectations of everything else she said that could happen. I haven't even written another book since then.
Totally.
I just was like, no, there was something. She was feeling the heartbeat of heaven for my life. And I'm just going to hold to that as I'm creating it and go, no, this is confirming something that was inside of me that I couldn't foresee. And that was, again, part of the book. There was something that Oki couldn't foresee that already was inside of him, equipped inside of him, that he didn't have any understanding of. But it wasn't until he walked out his journey that he watches the manifestation of that. And I know that's kind of cryptic. You're going to have to read the book or listen to the book.
But I mean, it's literally everything from the Adventure Challenge and Paul Young. It's a theme we've seen in people's lives. People who have these amazing stories, they always had this thing inside of them. they didn't know when they were on the journey that the journey would get them where they needed to be.
Yep.
Like wherever you're at on the journey, there's this thing. If we have trust and belief that we are gaining all of the wisdom and the tools and something is being sculpted inside of us, and that there is purpose and time for that.
Yes.
That it will come to fruition and to pass. There's this great hope that every season is building something that will be revealed.
Yep. And it's those of us who choose to decide that there is no hope. And I say decide, because there's this feeling of hopelessness that sets in for many people. And oftentimes hopelessness isn't happening necessarily to us. Like circumstances don't go well and it can be painful.
Yeah.
But a lot of times the immensity of hopelessness is something that we personally cultivate because we choose to believe that there's not going to be anything for us. We choose to disengage promises over our lives. We choose to not believe that there's something good about our creation, us being created as a human being. And we choose to believe that there's not something good about the fullness of our life and what it's meant to be here on earth.
Absolutely. So I watched you with this story live out what we're talking about. I'm going to take it piece by piece. You didn't know where the story was going to end.
Not at all.
Like you had this immense download, but then the story came to you chunk by chunk.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, I remember lots of people, if you can't figure out where your life is going, you've got to think more like driving in the dark with headlights. You can't see where the road's going to end up, but you can see as far as your highlights show. Headlights show. Highlights are what I get done to my hair. But so you can't see how far it is. And that's what you did with this book. You would write as much as you had, and then you would wait for the next inspiration. And then you would write as much as, and it was this beautiful thing of you getting healed and writing the healing into the story to invite people into that healing. And I wish, honestly, I wish in my healing processes that I would have been writing more, because now I have people so much that are like, what is the journey of how you got from A to Z? And I'm like, man, I wish I was writing during that, because then you could actually have the pathway. And so it's really beautiful that you created the pathway, but the pathway didn't stop once the story was done.
Nope.
So why don't you talk a little bit about, so you finish the book, you cry in the bathtub, you feel so happy, and then what's the next journey?
Well, what's interesting, because I was like, what's next? And it's interesting because right after I finished the book, I got a download for a 3-part series of an entirely different book and wrote it all down, and it hasn't been written yet, which is really fun. So something else was handed to me, and I'm like, I'm going to explore that when I get
you're
time.
Like, I was faithful with this. And so I got another.
Even though that book hadn't been published yet, I had been faithful with that.
To write it.
Anyways, I set it down and I said, okay, it's there. And I just started to sit on it for a while again. Didn't know what the next steps were.
This is what I love, though. So many people put pressure. They're so scared of failure. They're so scared of things never. If you have identity and you're not afraid, you can allow the journey to unfold. You never tried to control this journey.
Nope.
You never tried to make something happen.
No,
and I
didn't
see
try to
people
manipulate it. No.
try to make things happen instead of waiting for the right timing to fall together. And you were so good at that. In fact, I remember you had a friend who read a copy of the book and he loved it. He's a 50-year-old man, read it in like a day. He's like, I don't even like books.
No, he especially doesn't like books like kid books or
story books,
fictional books.
Yes.
You know,
he read it in a day and was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. I want to help you publish it. Like he was on board. Super, super successful businessman.
Yep.
Thought this is the best.
Yep. Here's what you're going to do. I'll put the money to it over here and we can make this happen and that happen. So for it. And I said, thank you so much, but no. He even told me, I have this publisher for you. And I had some feelings about the publisher. And I'm like, no,
it's not the right thing.
It's not the right thing. And I told him exactly what would happen with that publisher. And all these types of things did happen.
Yeah. You could see I
could see already things that were happening and I could feel it. And if I had been in desperation and believed and had an agenda of how it had to happen and when it had to happen, I would have ran with it. And it was almost like he gained respect. I think he felt like I was a little bit foolish and had respect for me all at the same time.
Totally.
He's like, I'm handing this over to you. Let's make this happen. And I'm like, no, it's not it.
Yep.
There's a timing on this.
This is not the right moment.
I will say that I'm actually proud of myself for that.
Yeah.
I'm proud of myself for where I've given up lots of opportunities in life not because I had fear of them, but because I didn't feel right about them, even though they looked really good.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people out there, and we're talking about even this component of it, is that many of you may have things come up in this season, and in your desperation may want to jump on it because you're in relationship with fear, not because you're in relationship with the peace inside of you to lead you and guide you towards your next step. So because I don't get tied up in that, I end up having all the rights to my book, but I still need a way of printing it at least. Now in this season, I have a friend.
I just got to throw in that the publishing company he was going to try to get you into fell apart.
Yep.
So then he had also more respect for you because you said that it was going to happen exactly the way it did.
And it did go down that way. Yep.
So you wait, continue on.
So I end up waiting, and it just so happens that a friend of ours, a close friend of ours, had walked away from the corporate world and been on his own journey of coming alive in many ways.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden gets inspired to create his own business.
Yeah.
What kind of business did he create, Abby?
He created a book printing company for people who wanted to self-publish. And then he decided, also, I want to create a company called Book Rally, which is basically like a crowdfunding website for authors who want to get their books published.
Totally. And so, and I don't even know that he's still running that portion of the company.
He closed it down. He used it for like 3 months, which you got it through.
Right. And then, but his printing company is doing incredible. But
it was so successful, he put all of his energy into that.
Yeah, into that. But it literally had a window of opportunity, a window of time.
He was like, will you come use Book Rally? Because it will help it get the word out of what we're doing, and it will be good statistics for us. Like we will have evidence of what you were able to do through Book Rally. So he really wanted you to do Book Rally because it was helpful for him. You were like the test run.
Yeah.
And then you needed to raise the money because if you haven't published a book, you have to pay for the printing, and printing is very expensive.
And everything else that goes into it. Yeah.
Editing, all this stuff. Yeah.
So what was so incredibly cool, you couldn't have told me, like if I stood up in front of a college and a college classroom, it was like, let me tell you, this is what you need to do in your plan. You need to somehow find a friend who's decided he's done with the corporate world and wants to go learn how to come alive. And then he wants to suddenly build a self-publishing company, and that's what you need to do to make a success. It just,
totally.
These things, you can't plan these things out.
You can't make them happen.
You can't. They come from saying yes to the steps right in front of you and saying yes to the journey.
I think this is why it's so inspirational, and even why the whole class rose at the end, because you hear thing after thing where you're like, you could not have made everything come to you. You couldn't have made it happen. But when we say yes to the journey, every resource, every person, every divine moment of inspiration, they all come. It just doesn't always come the way we think or want or in our timeline.
In the same season, in the exact same season, I'm talking to my friend David, and I'm like, dude, I need to get someone to do the cover of this book so that I can get it printed. And all of a sudden he's like, I know the perfect guy for you. And one time I did a favor for him. I don't even personally know him, but I made a connection for him, and I'm going to build a bridge.
He owes me. Now I'll have him connect with you.
And he goes, it's this guy, Noah. He does a bunch of Disney fine art. I guess he's really well known, and he builds a bridge for us to have a conversation. And we actually have a podcast that we're doing with Noah, and you'll get to hear between Noah and I the whole story with that.
Because it's incredible, because everybody who's been involved in this book, their life gets transformed. And your life gets so Noah came in and radical life changes for him in relating with you and walking through him finding his kid on the inside.
Yeah.
At the same time, what did he do for you?
Well, I'm not going to go too deep into that.
Because you don't want to ruin it.
I don't want to ruin it. But he did give me the gift of all the art for free and totally jumped in on the journey and said, I resonate with this story. This is the type of material that I've been longing to partner with. I've been doing this over here, but I really want to do stories like this that impart these types of truths. And he's like, I'm all in. I'm all in on your vision. He hadn't even read it yet. He's just like, I'm all in. What can I do to participate with you on this? And he committed a lot of time, talent, energy.
Oh, yeah. And financially, what he gave to us
it was a lot. We'll just put it that
ginormous gift.
Of what?
what happened is in the right timing, you published your book, but it got paid for by the crowdfunding. Like people helped pay to get it printed.
Yeah.
And get it published. And then you had people come in to help with all of the different pieces at the different time.
Yeah. And then I'll say this. The really big interesting thing is that in that season, I was on my road to my deep, deep sickness.
Yeah.
And on my road to almost dying that I didn't know that was happening.
I know.
So I had literally
the irony of writing a book called The Tree of Life
and I'm in the middle of going to dying as it's coming
Mm-hmm.
out. It's crazy, right? But in it, I was like, all I have the capacity to do is to launch on Book Rally.
Yep,
and I got, and with it, people got the books from that. And I had no way to promote it.
Totally.
I didn't have any capacity.
Yeah.
And I just was like, okay, this is what I have the capacity for.
Mm-hmm.
And I accepted that that's where it was. And I also said, I know that there'll be a reawakening of it when it's time.
Yes.
And in the journey, as we've traveled and spoke, I mean, we've sold about 5,000 copies of the book, which is considered a success.
People don't know that, but like most authors will not sell 1,000. Like I think it's like 90% of authors.
If they hit 1,000, it was like miraculous, pretty much. So when
it's
you
like
hit
90% of authors.
When you hit like 5,000, you have a massive success already considered in that field.
Totally.
But I still like couldn't figure out how to promote it or anything, and didn't have the grace to do it. So I let it sit. And then I don't know, about 8 months to a year ago, I all of a sudden got stirred, and I'm like, I'm supposed to record the audiobook.
It's time.
It's time. Mm-hmm. And I started praying I started like looking at the book, and I'd say, Oki, because Oki's the main character. Uh-huh. I'd say, Oki, you have permission to get legs and run. You have permission to take off. You have permission to go be what you want to be, to do what you want to do. I will not hinder you. I will participate with you in this journey. And it was me agreeing with this creative resource that was sitting in front of me and really saying yes to this next step in whatever God's heart was on it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I kind of fished around with a couple different people about like getting the audio taken care of. And one of my friends who I just love him so much, such a good guy. He does music and he was willing to record the book for me. He's like, I've never done that, but I'll try it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I didn't feel a yes yet.
Mm-hmm. This is what the amount of patience and discipline it takes to wait till you feel an internal yes.
I will tell another part of this story. It is like, it's interesting. There was someone prior to even this friend who was a musician, who was a producer.
And he wanted to produce it for you.
He wanted to produce it. And I was just about to sign with him. And I kept feeling a no, don't. And it was even, let me see how to put it. I hadn't yet had the aha of it's time to go forward with it.
Yeah.
I had like a twinkling inside of me that's like, maybe I should record it. And I talked with him about it. And he was like, yeah, let's go forward with this. And I was kind of getting geared up for it. And then he actually passed away.
Yeah. It was like a shocking thing.
And if we had gotten into it the month prior when I'd basically pushed back about a month or 2 months, like, nah, I don't know.
It's not right yet.
And he passed away, which was really tragic. I loved him so much, such a good man. And that's kind of a sad piece of the story, but also wild how it was like, I followed my gut and was
but
like,
even
no.
back then, you were still in dying.
Yeah.
You were dying at that point when that would have been recorded.
Yeah.
And the Tree of Life is not meant to be recorded
in the midst of death.
In the midst of death.
It's supposed to be done in life.
Yes.
So,
I mean, you literally went through the story of going from death to life. And so you wrote this book as you learned the journey of breaking out of death on your inside world. Then your body went through death. And then you came to where your inside world was alive and your body was alive.
Totally.
That is the time to record the audio.
Totally. So fast forward, I pushed back on this one friend, the second one, as far as like push back away from engaging it. And I was like, all right, I just need to keep waiting. And it wasn't that I'd even written him off as doing it. It was just, I'm just supposed to wait. And then I get an email from someone who's like, I want to get into your office and work with you, which at that time I'd already started the process of reducing my one-on-one client meetings.
Totally. So you weren't taking clients.
So I wasn't taking on any new clients, but at the bottom in his signature, it had recorded word as a signature. Recorded word. What is that? I do some searching and find out that he's actually a high-level professional
for
books, audiobooks.
This is all his thing does. And his company is so successful. They've had 1 billion downloads or something?
Over 1 billion
plays
of their books sold.
Unbelievable.
They've recorded. And he's worked with some high level narrators, all kinds of stuff like that. And that's a story that you guys are going to hear about with Ryan in the coming weeks.
Because it's another one of those stories where his life radically gets changed. His kid comes back alive. The kid that had been buried and died. And this is what I love. The unfolding of this story wasn't just about you.
No, not at all.
The unfolding of this story was also, it was for the artist, it was for the audiobook person, it was for the publisher. Like, the story has impacted the people around it, where it is that calling of people back to, listen, if our childlike innocence is dead, we will never feel fulfilled and alive.
Exactly.
We will never be able to make it through life. And trauma shuts down that kid part of us. And if we can't get back to that hope and that wonder and that joy and that the belief that things are possible, the skepticism and the disappointment of life can literally weigh us down until we lose the magic joy of that is the strength. Listen, joy is our strength. And wonder and faith and hope, those are the things that empower us to live through seasons. And so when we when we're not connected to the childlike part of us, we are living half dead. And so you see you'll hear with the audio, the engineer about his incredible story of his heart being awakened and his childlike self coming back, and just how that interweaved, and then this beautiful experience where you were coming alive and he was coming alive in unison, recording this book.
Yeah, and that was so cool. And again, a whole part of the book is about the stories, the stories that interweave in and out of our lives, back and forth through our lives, and we are giving and receiving. There's a synergy through all the people who come in and out of our lives, but that only really happens when we say yes, when we're willing to allow it to happen, when we're willing to choose in. When we are resistant, we push out so many gifts, so many people who are actually meant to be part of our transformation process, and us be part of theirs.
And part of this is engaging faith.
Yes.
What we're talking about is the belief of faith. Faith that I believe the right people will come into my life at the right time. Faith that I believe that I'm being divinely guided to the right situations, the right circumstances. Faith that everything I need is going to come to me. Lots of people have faith that nothing will work out for them, that they'll never get what they need, that things only work out for other people. Whatever you put faith into, you will manifest. And so we're trying to remind people, I'm thinking even about how you had the faith that every piece that you would need to be empowered, every part of this would come to you. And so I'm thinking about the voice teacher that you had.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one real quick. So which you're actually going to meet with her today.
I am. Woo! I'm going to get voices in my head. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, voices in my head. So I had this incredible woman named Jessica Souza enter into my world, and she said, "Hey, I want to get some help inside of my own personal life."
Yeah.
And it was at it was part of the crossroads where I wasn't even taking people on. And I just said yes to that initially. And then all of a sudden, as I started to move into this, because I just felt connected, like I'm like, yeah, I want to participate in her story. And something stirred up inside of me. And I was like, oh, she's a coach. She's actually a voice coach and an actress. She used to be in plays and all kinds of stuff, big ones. And I was like, what would you say to me helping you in your world and you come help me in mine? I want to actually get my voice right and ready for this experience. And what's unique about her is that she's not a technical coach. She's an emotional voice coach, basically, where she can do the technical stuff.
Sure.
But it's about unlocking your voice that is inside of your entire being. And so, and I'm a guy that feels like I have my voice.
Totally.
But I'm sitting in this exact room, scream crying repeatedly in our sessions as she's getting me to connect to all parts of my story where I lost my voice in relationship with people, where I got ran over, humiliated, demeaned, belittled.
And you actually were able to like reclaim your voice,
absolutely
re-engage that.
And it builds something. It's crazy because I'm already a confident guy, but there was a healing that took place where I was like, oh no, I know what I have to say. I am not scared to step into these realms of this stuff. There was an equipping that took place. And again, the book was a vehicle for relationship that both of us had an exchange where she was getting her own transformation and I'm getting radically undone by it.
Yeah. It's really powerful that right when it was time for you to do an audiobook recording with your voice, you felt like you got, I remember when you met with her, you were like, if my whole book was just so that I could have these sessions,
and that's
so that I could get liberated, so that I could find my voice, get it back from
then that's all that matters.
Then that would be worth it.
Yep.
Which I loved so much. I want to talk really quick about this book. You'll hear more and more of the story and how beautiful it is that it unfolds. And you'll hear the theme the whole time, to trust the journey, to come alive in the season that you're in, to trust the process.
Yeah.
Like you're going to find that. There is a part of the book that I want to play. This is one of my all-time favorite chapters. And it is so, the allegory, the visual that you painted is so powerful and profound. So do you want to just explain what they're going to hear?
I'll go ahead and cue it up. So there's just a couple minutes here. You're going to get
3 minutes.
Yep. A view, a listen of the book.
A
sneak peek. And what we have here is we have Oki in the forest with Morgan and Dakota. Morgan is a father tree inside of the forest, the father apple tree. There's Dakota, who's like his first son that was born here in this space. And then we have Oki, who's now
like the adopted.
He's like the adopted kid who's been brought into who's now inside of this orchard here. And they are facing a really difficult situation. A storm has come into the orchard and it looks perilous. It looks like it's just going to devastate everyone and there's no hope. And so we're going to jump into that and you guys can go ahead and let it speak to you. Flashes of lightning illuminated the midnight sky. Giant gusts of wind whipped wildly through the trees. Leaves swirled about in clusters like swarms of bees. The rain rode the wind, which blew whatever direction it saw fit. Every animal and insect that could found shelter. Those that weren't as lucky braved the storm, directionless and lost. Lightning pounded the ground, leaving its mark like a bullwhip throughout the orchard. "What do we do?" Oki shouted at the top of his lungs to Dakota. "We just have to hope for the best and wait it out," Dakota shouted back, then turned frantically to his father. "As long as I've lived, I've never seen a storm this intense, Dad. Are we going to be okay?" Just then, a nearby tree was sliced in two by the most fascinating and terrifying bolt of lightning any of them had ever seen. All the trees shrieked in unison at the booming sound and jarring sight. "I don't want to die! I still haven't made apples!" Oki yelled. "Dakota! Oki! Look at me!" Morgan shouted. "This is not a time to get scared." Without warning, a great crack bang grabbed their attention. Off in the distance, an avocado tree came crashing down, crushing the smaller trees around it. The wind howled louder and blew stronger. "If not now, then when?" Dakota screamed. Morgan stood strong in his heart like only a tree with decades of experience, wisdom, and truth could. "Listen closely, everyone," Morgan commanded the attention of the orchard. "Pay no attention to the lightning and thunder. You cannot control it. It will do what it wills. If you can focus closely on what I say, you will become stronger than you could ever imagine." The torrential downpour of rain made rushing rivers throughout the orchard, sweeping away the smaller creatures that didn't have the strength or power to hold on. A young apple tree, not nearly big enough for a squirrel to climb, lost root in the ground and was taken prisoner by the monster winds and treacherous river, never to be seen again. Oki watched in horror. "Oki, look at me! Keep your eyes on me and me alone. Everyone! Right now, the ground is extremely soft.
We can either lose root and be knocked over, or we can do something that was previously impossible. The orchard held tight to every word, pushing in for Morgan's direction. Sink your roots in! Sink them deep! This is a gift for all of you if you'll accept it. Allow yourselves to grow. The ground can't stop you. There's nothing in your way. Don't miss this opportunity by being afraid of everything that is going on around you. This storm is for you. It's not against you. Now grow. Sink your roots.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. It's changed my life so much. This storm is for you, not against you. And then the idea of like, because the ground is soft when it's stormy, your roots can get deeper so much faster. It's just, I mean, I literally live my life by that. That's what I love. You put most of the main themes that we work with our clients into this book. Like most of the themes of, if you see life this way, if you have this world view, you'll run forward into healing and wholeness.
Yeah.
And you snuck all of the keys in there.
Yeah, totally.
So I wanted to just say really quick, this book is, it's interesting because we had this one woman, we've had so many people say this book is like watching a movie. When they read it, it feels like watching a movie, which is kind of fun because you went to film school.
Actually, I'll say this really quick. An ex-acquisitions editor, a former acquisitions editor, it's the person who comes in and acquires the books that they think that they want to sell from a very well-known company called Zondervan. She now left the company. She was willing to do a favor for a friend and read the book. And she said, this is wild. This reads like a finely polished movie script. I wouldn't have known that this is a first-time author. This feels like a well-seasoned author who created this. There's a movie angle at this, and you guys need to run after it. And a few other things. And I was like, oh my gosh. Film school paid off.
It paid off. It worked out. And I mean, everybody says that. You can literally see... you see in your mind what is happening. You paint such beautiful pictures. And I loved it because we've seen such a diversity. We have 80-year-old men who are crying, weeping, telling you they have hope for their life.
Moving forward, they can see the purpose that's still available. They see the purpose
that's still there. They see the power of legacy. They see that life matters for them. We have teenagers who read it, who love it, who won't put the book down, whose parents are like, I don't know how they got them to read that. We have all these parents who've written in and are like, thank you so much because this book is entertaining enough. My kids actually like it.
Yeah, they sit quiet. My kids are quiet when I read this to them. And it's also interesting because I've had like 8-9-year-olds who carry the book with them everywhere they go.
Yes.
And parents who are like dozens of parents who have said stories like this. My kid is now on the 6th or 7th time reading this book. So, and it reminds me of my sister when she would watch a Disney film on repeat, like The Little Mermaid. I had to bust the DVD, the video at one point because I was like, I can't stand watching this. Totally. That's what they keep doing.
Yes. And then we have like teenagers who've read the book. Then I had a bunch of 20-year-olds. I had one 20-year-old who threw it across the room because it like hit so much of what her life was like and her experiences, and it brought up pain and healing to begin. And we've had multiple people get tattoos from the book. It's an allegory. The book is an allegory. It gives you life, kind of like The Alchemist. It gives life truths, but inside of his stories are so much easier to read than self-help. This is why I love what you did, because there's a million self-help books out there and they're boring. They're interesting though. They are interesting. I read them a lot, but there's something about story that sucks your heart in. So you're not just getting head knowledge, you're experiencing heart connection to something. So we've seen it be both genders, all ages. Parents love reading it to their kids. We have parents that are like, I sneak and read more after I get done reading to my kids because I still want to find out what happens. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful that you went to film school and that you were able to write this story. The amount of life transformation we've heard of from this book feels like such a huge gift.
And I'll say this to kind of tie this all together and wrap this up. You know, my story was a yes in my early 20s, a yes to film school, a yes to this pulling inside of me that said, leave Montana, go to California. It was a yes when I chose to not go to film school in New York, but it was specifically, it was all these yeses where I just followed something inside of my gut. And really the beauty of our stories collectively, if we say yes to the journey and choose to engage it, the fullness of it isn't really understood until we look back in retrospect and we start going, oh my gosh, it was all laid out. It was all available to me. There was a good dad in participation the entire time in the darkest moments. And that's what created adventure. That's what created wonder. That's what created limitless possibilities, was when I said yes to it. Even when I didn't understand, even when things didn't look that great, it opened up a beautiful story that got written with my life.
Yeah. It's been beautiful to watch. I have so much respect for you because I'm sure I would have controlled it. I would have wanted to be in control and make things happen if it was my own story. And I think that's one of the reasons it was given to you, is because you didn't make it happen on your own. You trusted it. And I think that's incredible and beautiful. And Justin, we have enough listeners that we could have advertising. People pay us for it, and make money from it. And I'm always like, great, let's make some money. And Justin's like, no, we're not going to do advertisements. We want our listeners to not be bombarded by things. That's your heart and everything. So, we purposefully don't add advertisements to this, but this is my advertisement that I am going to add, which is the Tree of Life. Put it in your calendars, August 17th through the 21st. Get the audiobook. You will enjoy it. This is such a season of heaviness and intensity. Everybody needs a story that is fun and exciting and life-giving and healing, and reminds us about the power of forgiveness and the power of belief, and reminds us ultimately everyone needs to be reminded that their life has a purpose, even if it doesn't look like everyone around them, even if they can't see how that purpose is going to be unfolded. Every person out there who's listening, your life has a purpose. And even if you can't see it, you are headed towards that destiny. And this is a season to be reminded of faith, not fear.
Come on. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for supporting this dream as we move towards watching it get legs and go out and touch the world. And we can't wait to hear your stories of what you get out of this podcast. Tag us at Justin Stumble and at Abby Stumble. Remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, because we'd love to hear the story of how you get inspired as well.
Oh, yeah. I love hearing what people think about it.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Dun, dun, dun.
Bye now.